Hi, my name is Dan Fishman. I am a Libertarian candidate for Congress in the 6th District of Massachusetts, and you guys are watching Two Hotheads, where activism happens.
Live back on Two Hotheads, where activism happens, talking about our beverages of choice today, aren't we, Heather?
We are.
It's not beer. It's caffeine or Powerade.
No, my kid's just housing a double gulp over here.
Powerade.
That's illegal in New York City, so.
It is. It
Be
should
careful.
Not. That's why I actually doubled down. I used to get the regular gulp. But
now you're doing it for freedom.
Oh, yeah. It's all about freedom. Freedom of choice.
And it is.
And I can do it because I got the good body. I can do a double gulp. It's fine.
Don't rub it in, all right? I ain't double gulping over here. But, so speaking of freedom... Yeah. We have Dan Fishman, who is running for Congress as a Libertarian in the 6th Congressional District, and we're happy to have him on the show.
Yeah, hello, Dan.
Welcome.
Guys, I'm really happy to be here.
Very glad to have you here. And we've been having all sorts of discussions ever since you walked in the door about all sorts of stuff. But I wonder what made you want to run for Congress, and specifically as a Libertarian. Did you have experience?
I've never run for office before in my life. I've always been libertarian-leaning. 20-odd years ago, in my mid-20s, I thought I was a Republican. I understood the ideas of smaller government, and I thought that's what the party stood for. But as the party really changed and became dominated by really social conservatism, and I don't even think it's fair to say it's social conservatism. I would say it's more sort of...
freedom, hatred?
Intolerance, essentially.
Yeah.
I realized that there was no place for me. And so I moved out, and for a while I was unaffiliated. And recently I've been thinking that the Libertarian Party is organized with the idea that we are all in search of liberty. We are all in search of as much liberty as we can handle. And that basic concept is one that, if we specify exactly what we mean by it, and we say that we have to be committed to the fact that if I am tolerant, I'm tolerant of things I don't like. Yeah. And this is something that's true for both Republicans and Democrats, who will tell you that they're tolerant, but they don't really tolerate things that they don't like. For example, I know a lot of people who are Democrats who say they're super tolerant, but if an evangelical Christian comes around, they say, I cannot stand that son of a... Yeah. And the thing about it is, you got to tolerate it all. You got to tolerate it all, because that's what we're talking about. And that's why the Libertarian Party appealed to me, because they recognize the fact that even the crazy stuff, even the stuff that we're saying, how can somebody say that? Like, Westboro Baptist Church. Those guys, I cannot stand them.
But you still have a right to say it.
Exactly right. And that's the way it's got to be. And so that's why I decided to run as a Libertarian.
That's a tough one for me, though. Well, that's about as far, that's... where I start to question.
Well, in the marketplace of ideas, the fact that is out there, it delegitimizes so much. It only
all
works.
About it, but I'm just saying on that case, because they went up to Lisa the Piper family up in.
It's evil. It's evil.
Absolutely.
It's downright evil. But at the same time, in the marketplace of ideas, they're proving how morally bankrupt that type of organized hatred is.
And you see sort of this, it really serves as a rallying point to a certain extent, because you see people rally, like at A&M this happened, University of Texas, Texas A&M, huge rivals. I will say good things about Texas A&M, because those guys, when they had a situation like that and Westboro Baptist came, everybody got together and they lined the street so that the family and the funeral procession, stuff like that, all they would see was people who were supporting them, stuff like that. The way that the community can rally around
at the same time, wouldn't the best response almost be to just ignore them? To just not even give it any attention or media?
I think that there's something to that. There's no question that they respond because of the reaction that they get. And they are searching for a big reaction. On the other hand, if what it does is galvanize us.
Galvanize the community.
Exactly.
It's just like question 3.
Right,
They've done the same thing. The more outrageous they are, the more they attack patients or myself or whoever they're attacking right now at this moment, whatever craziness they're spouting, it just galvanizes our community to act against them.
And you know what it is in a certain way, there's sort of a similarity, because those guys feel like they are the last defense of their values. And so they have to go extreme because they're the only ones left, and they go crazy about it.
Yep.
And, that's how you know that the end is coming.
That's it.
When they resort to being crazy, things are about to change.
That's when I smile, too. It's like, oh, man, exactly. Oh, yeah, exactly it. It's over.
Right, exactly. And, that's the thing about it, is that, it's going to be a conversation that in 10 years we're going to be saying, oh, I remember the last days. I remember when everything was going to change. And we just couldn't wait.
Yep. And this is it.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah. I will knock on wood, though.
Yeah, we'll knock on wood. I'll knock on wood. But question 3 is going to pass.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about that? That's like the second bullet point on your website. You talk about all of the different the things you stand for.
Yeah, HR 2306. I think it's great legislation, and it's an example of bipartisan legislation.
And this is the repeal of marijuana prohibition federally.
Exactly, and essentially what it does, and Gary Johnson does a great job of explaining it. I'll touch on it too. Essentially, makes cannabis be exactly the same as alcohol or tobacco. Kids are not going to be able to buy marijuana if you're under 18. You're not going to be able to drive a bus while you're under the influence of whatever. However, it means that it's not criminal for you to partake, especially in a controlled environment like your own home.
Right.
Possession would no longer be criminal. And Barney Frank, Ron Paul, two guys who could not be more different in their political outlook, both sponsored it. Mike Capuano, who is the congressman from here.
From Somerville,
I actually helped get him to sign that. That was...
He's a great guy.
He was supporting, was part of it, and then I said, you're not supporting repeal. And he said he did in the video I did with him, but shortly after he did sign on to it. So this is what we need to do more of. We preach this all the time.
Take your politicians to task
and be nice to them. Just show up
in a way.
It's amazing what happens when you show up
because they don't hear from anyone. Yeah. They're just insulated in their little world. I mean, they don't get letters. They don't get emails very often from citizens.
Like I got my guy state rep to me, and he's still not with us, but he's gotten a lot closer. He told me he's almost ready to support medical. I mean,
you're hitting on exactly one of the reasons that I'm running is that we have become so disenfranchised from our government. In the Constitution, the very beginning, it said 1 member of the House for every 30,000 citizens. And they kept doing that for a while, but around the turn of the century, 1900s, they said, we can't do it anymore. Yeah. We're going to stop at 435 representatives. We don't want to build a bigger building. And now what we're going to do is we're going to adjust the size of the population that is required to get 1 member of the House. Massachusetts just lost a seat in the last census, and the reason why is because population expanded and it grew in other places faster than it grew in Massachusetts. But even so, it's 770,000 people per representative at this point in time.
Oh, my God.
And how can government at that level be responsive? More than that, how can government at that level be one where you feel like...
Be effective.
That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Is that, there's so many issues, and now it's about who you know. So one of the great things that happened at the last debate I was at was there was a guy who came up, he was a veteran, and he said, I had this thing, and I was denied my disability, and so I called John Tierney. He said he would see what he could do about it, and I called Richard Tisei, and he said he would see what he could do about it. I want to know why government has gotten to that level, that the only way that your voice is heard anymore is you have to have a congressman come in and speak for you. Why is your voice now, and the reason why is because our government has gotten so large, 300 million people in this country, one federal government to oversee us all.
Yeah,
it's not scaling.
And they have a staff and they have contacts.
The buffer zone.
So that's what they do. They'll help you out if they can.
Well, and that
is what you need
exactly. And it's great that people have this sort of resource, et cetera. But it's too big at this point in time. 770,000 people looking for one guy, and even worse, Massachusetts 6 million people, 2 senators. I mean,
what would you propose to change that? What would you put in its place?
The problem is the reason why people go there is because there's so much power at the federal level.
Yeah, absolutely.
At this point in time, we can say, you know what? We have this amazing idea of 50 states. I mean, our name is United States. We're meant to be united, but we're meant to be states. Yeah. And if you think about it, the Affordable Care Act, whether you like it or not, the thing about it is that it came out of Massachusetts. It came out of our state, which I have a tremendous amount of pride in Massachusetts as an engine of innovation. We are an amazing resource in terms of healthcare, in terms of education, but also, we have tremendous industry. We have old school fishing industry on the North Shore of my district. You go out west, you have old school agriculture. Massachusetts is this amazing blend. The plan that came out here was right for Massachusetts. We worked on it here. I don't think it's right for Mississippi. Can you imagine if Mississippi had come up with their own health care plan and somehow the Republicans had gotten that through and we had to throw away our Massachusetts plan for the Mississippi plan? I mean, the Mississippi plan...
But at the same time, you have to argue on the other hand. I mean, how many other civil rights laws would not have been passed in those states if it was purely individual states making those decisions?
It's an excellent point. What I would say to that is that people who say, without the federal government, the South is going to go back to slavery.
I didn't say that.
No, but I certainly hear that a lot. And I would say that that's on the same line of people who say that if we get rid of the Defense of Marriage Act, people are going to marry their cats.
Right, which is ludicrous.
Right. It is,
but I don't necessarily think that. I feel. Go ahead.
I was going to say the purpose of federal government is exactly that, to defend our individual civil liberties. 14th Amendment, equal protection under the law, that's exactly where the federal government is meant to interject itself. And so if you have a state government taking away people's civil liberties, segregation, busing, etc., that's exactly where the federal government is.
But does that extend? I mean, does that extend to public education? Does that extend to public transportation and those types of public programs? Because that's the only thing I clash with libertarians on.
So I would say, and full disclosure here, I'm a former special education teacher. I spent 7 years in the classroom. I don't think that the federal government can do a good job with local education because of scale.
Yes.
Not because their intentions are bad.
One size fits all, again.
Exactly right. And the thing about
But then again, you have individual school boards in Texas that are saying we need to teach creationism and
and I have a real difficulty with that. My father is a scientist. I have a strong science background. My first job ever was dissecting squid in a lab in Woods Hole.
That's cool. Actually, I have a friend who worked at that lab.
Oh yeah, down in MBL. Yeah.
Yes.
Small world.
That is a small world, yeah.
But in terms of a local thing, and I'll take a special education example, there's a lot of controversy still about how to deal with severe autistics, which was the last population that I was involved teaching in the classroom. It's got to be a personal response level. The parents are the experts on the kids, and so schools can do what they want. They can say, we know this thing works, we know this thing works, but it may not work for your kid, and we don't really know that. Now, I don't think creationism is science at all. It's not.
Right.
And so if we're going to say that we want to teach science, teaching creationism should not fulfill that. On the other hand, there is the idea
free speech of...
Well, essentially what it is what is going to be taught in a public school. And right now, creationism, intelligent design, as it is taught, is not religiously neutral. And therefore, it has no place in a public school to be taught. My argument is not against the idea that we're going that we should necessarily control the curriculum. We certainly wouldn't say that Catholic schools shouldn't be allowed to teach creationism.
Sure.
But the problem is that in a public school, we should not teach religion in any way, shape, or form. And, specifically in the First Amendment, there should make no laws respecting the establishment of religion.
I think this is a great discussion here, because I think this is where I get frustrated a lot of times, because I think people progressively don't get where we're coming from. And I think you explained it very well, is that there is still a role for the federal government. It's not like we want to say no federal government.
But
we just want it to be limited to what you're talking about, when they need to step in.
Right.
When they need to
I understand that.
And there's a great example of this with Rand Paul. Famously did an interview with Rachel Maddow, who I love me some Maddow.
Yeah, me too.
Some of them call her Mad Cow. Have you heard that one?
Oh, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear that. No, I ain't trying to hear that about
Rachel. I could watch her and I like her, but I just think it's funny.
Yeah,
big ups to Maddow.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Absolutely right. So she did an interview with Rand Paul, where he talked about the fact that he didn't support one small piece of the civil rights legislation, and people blew that up.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a legitimate thing that people should talk about, and we should get upset about, and we should have real conversations about. But the question is, can you tell somebody that they can't be a small-minded bigot in their own house?
No,
I don't think so. To me,
no,
it's the same.
But how is the power distributed? Does that small-minded bigot run a city council? Does that And that's the problem.
Exactly.
Is when you take the unequal access to resources is still prevalent in our culture, in our country.
No, and there's no question about it. And that's where
who's in power,
right? And that's what we have to say. And so I would disagree with Rand Paul in terms of what he said, because he said that a small business ought to be able to discriminate within their business. I would say that if your business...
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I disagree with that. I would say that if your business doesn't want to use public money, if they don't want to use public roads, if they don't want to have public police protection and public fire protection, well, then you are entirely private. But if you're going to use any of those things, you are within the public domain, and therefore you have to follow the public laws.
That's a tough one, though, at the same time, because you have, like, we brought this up before, Mary Lou's Coffee. Or even, how about, like, a gentleman's club?
Yeah.
I mean, they're not going to hire me to dance. You know what I mean? They're not going to hire a 300-pound Wanda to dance.
Why not? Hey.
They're going to dance.
There's a market for you, Mike, I'm sure.
They're going to hire who to dance that the customers want to see. And the same thing with, like, music. Like,
that's
can we
totally
really be equally as
important? That's a totally different thing. That's like actors and actresses. Because
and also
they're performers.
Exactly. We don't say that you can't be selective. You can't have criteria about who you choose. We say that you cannot discriminate on the grounds of race, religion, or color.
And gender.
Very specific.
Like Mary Lou's Coffee, they're not going to hire me to serve coffee because it is almost like an entertainment job. I think maybe that's the problem.
I think,
like
Hooters might be a better example than Mary Lou's Coffee. But yeah, exactly.
But the federal government is actually investigating. They've got a case against Mary Lou's Coffee right now.
Really?
Because of their hiring practices. The fact that they only hire attractive young girls.
Well, I mean,
17 to 25.
It's an interesting question. I would say that, ageism cases have gone before the federal courts before, specifically like stewardesses you think about back in the 70s. But nowadays, it's not uncommon to see older people working as stewardesses, and you see men and women.
Sure.
And so I think that there is some case where you can say, yeah, there probably shouldn't be gender discrimination.
Yeah.
Exactly. But there are also things where you have to say, you know what? Gender has a role here. A friend of mine's daughter is dancing in Nutcracker in Boston this year. And
wow.
One of the reasons that she's doing it is because she weighs 90 pounds.
Yeah.
And, a male ballerina.
But she's also trained her entire life. I mean, that's a different thing.
Exactly
I mean, you're not
right.
going to get promoted through it's skills and talents. It's not just,
right.
we might argue about the skills and talents of a Hooters waitress, but in one way or another, you can consider that experience. And I don't think that's a similar situation to discriminating against someone on the basis of their skin in in the terms that Rand Paul was saying it.
Exactly.
So, taking it back to that, that's my only critique. That's the only time I ever come up against libertarians.
I think it's a good thing to discuss because I think that's where I come from. Is that the federal government does have a role. Their role is to come in and be the final watchdog, to be to break up the monopolies, to stop the states from breaking our constitutional rights. But their role is not to.
Right now, they're breaking our constitutional rights.
But their role is not to be the person that breaks the. Exactly. They're not to control everything and micromanage everything, which they're doing now.
There's a great quote, Adam Smith. He said, 2 people of the same trade seldom meet, but the conversation ends in a conspiracy against the public. And that's what happens. If you get 2 guys in the same business together, the next thing you know, they're price fixing. That's another place where government really has a real role. We're talking about how right now what's happening is government is sort of taking people's rights away because of the fact that government is really owned by the corporations. So I'm not as anti-corporation as everybody is because I understand the basic idea of what a corporation is. Corporation was formed as a legal construct by government so that a person could start a business, incorporate themselves, and if the business went south, they didn't lose their house.
Exactly.
You could sue the business, but you couldn't sue the person. They wouldn't go bankrupt.
Right.
And that's a good thing. In the beginning, government created the corporation so that businesses could make money. But what we have now is corporations creating the government so that businesses can make money. And that's a real problem. Government is taking rights away from people so that corporations can do more, so that they can push the boundaries. And that's something that we need to stop.
And that's why Gary Johnson isn't in the debates.
It's absolutely true. I mean, you look, it's about money at this point in time. You look at what it takes to go out there and buy something. If Gary Johnson, look at the last third-party candidate to get into the debate. It was Ross Perot. He was a billionaire.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
I tell you what, if Gary Johnson had $1 billion and he were buying advertising,
if it was George Soros who was running,
Bloomberg, or if he owned CBS, or
right, exactly.
I mean, it's pretty sad when a state of affairs when we have a third-party candidate, Gary Johnson, who's a governor. We have Judge Jim Gray. These are 2 serious and like the best libertarian candidates I've seen forever.
Yep, absolutely.
And they still can't get in the debates.
Well, and when that on the ballot, if you are on the ballot, that means people are going to have a choice to vote for you. How does somebody who is conscientious as a journalist say, you know what, I don't want people to be informed about one of the choices that they can vote for?
Yeah, about 2.
Yeah, exactly.
3 if we're going to include Vermin Supreme and Jimmy McMillan.
Well, Rocky, who's the Justice Party candidate?
Rocky Johnson, is it?
I don't know.
Rocky something.
We'll look it up at the break. Rocky
Bullwinkle.
We need a fact checker here on staff.
But there are a lot of the candidates out there. Gary Johnson, I think he's on the ballot in all
47.
50
Yeah.
It
should be 48.
It's going to be. They'll make it.
There's 2 of them. Have you seen?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania, he's going to get on. So it'll be 48 there.
Right. And what are the other 2?
Oklahoma. Not going to happen.
Oklahoma's barely a state.
What happened? In Oklahoma, I think they got screwed.
Yeah, they have 2 electoral votes.
Again, full disclosure, I grew up in Texas, so anti-Oklahoma is in my blood.
Oh, wow, yeah.
In Michigan, a judge said that he couldn't be on it because he had been on as a Republican in the primaries.
Really?
Which I think is... who the hell is this judge to decide who people can vote for?
Right.
When the signatures were submitted. Come on.
Right. And voting is speech as far as I'm concerned. It should be constitutionally protected. One of the controversial opinions that I have for a lot of people is that I'm not in favor of term limits. I know a lot of people think term limits are a good way to control the government. My feeling about it is that term limits limit your speech because your speech is who you want to vote for.
Yeah.
Even though I think that it would be a good idea to change up the government, I don't know, every 6 months or so.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to codify it into law. I don't want to say you can't vote for who you want.
I can respect that.
That's a good point.
I kind of support that, I think.
All right, that's good.
I'm there.
Interesting.
One convert already.
Just about everything Dan says so far, I'm with.
We're on your side
I'll be
already
there.
because I mean, obviously, you're on the right side of freedom. That's what
marijuana
matters a lot to
legalization.
us.
We already know, but we want to say it again. You support
Absolutely. I'm a strong
repeal of
supporter.
prohibition, marijuana legalization. 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, actually, marijuana is the same issue as almost every other liberty issue because I don't think it's anything about marijuana specifically, but it's about what do you have the right to do with your private life? What do you have the right to do in your bedroom, in your house? What do you have to do? What do you have the right to do as long as you're not impacting anybody else's freedom? And I would say that 99.9% of the cases I know where somebody has been arrested for marijuana, they were not affecting anybody else.
True.
They were just
What if,
Right.
smoking in public.
Does that
Absolutely.
extend to other drugs too? Would you say like you would go with repeal of LSD and
So I do think that that's where we should go, but Thomas Jefferson has a great statement where he says, we can't jump to freedom all at once.
Sure.
We have to walk
Right.
there. So let's take
Increments.
steps. Exactly. We'll start with marijuana, and who knows, there may be some consequence that I don't see right now. That's something we say, you know what, we need to modify the marijuana laws a little bit. I'll give you a great example. My brother lives in Colorado, and when they legalized medical marijuana there, one of the things that they didn't do was think about the zoning.
The zoning, yeah.
Exactly
and
right.
that's what's caused all the backlash has been the improper zoning and the fact that
And in
people
LA
are
Exactly
upset
right. Yeah.
about seeing dispensaries near schools.
Right.
And, stuff
And
like
in
that.
LA,
and they could
that's
have
the
easily
huge
changed
problem.
that.
The city
Exactly right.
council in LA, I mean, the No One Question 3 group is attacked about LA.
Right.
And the problem with LA is the city council has refused to set any ordinances. They've refused to do anything because they're frightened of both sides.
Right. And, that's an example of how we can learn and we can, take steps. As long as we're progressing towards liberty, I'm happy to say we can do it one step at a time. Let's be cautious about it. Let's be smart about it. But let's say that we do want to get to this final destination.
And another one of those issues that we spend a lot of time on here in the studio is talking about audit the Fed. And you're in support of the audit the Fed bill.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, one of the things that's really alarming to me right now is that the biggest threat that's what's happening to us, my little rhyme is that debt is the threat. And at this point in time, we are accumulating debt so fast that every person who is born in this country ends up owing money. The interest on the debt alone is $450 billion. In 5 years, interest on the debt is going to be more than either Social Security or what we're spending on defense.
Wow.
It's crazy. We have to find a way to hit that, to stop hitting the debt ceiling, stop
And it's
pushing
not
it.
cutting out Big Bird. I'm
No.
sorry.
Well, at this point in time, we have to find a way to say everything that we're doing has to be under the microscope. Absolutely everything, because what's happening is we are getting so far in debt that we are really risking everything. And so the IMF came out with a statement last week warning about the fiscal cliff. And what they said is that if America hits the fiscal cliff, it's going to be disastrous for the world economy. But what I heard of that is bankers telling the United States that if you
Right.
start
That it's our
stop
fault.
borrowing money from banks,
Yeah.
the banks are going to be unhappy.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeez. I mean, here's the thing. We also have a greater wealth and equity in this country than we have ever had before.
Yep.
But one of the reasons why is because we keep slicing up the pie. It used to be that you could only be so wealthy or only so poor, but you would own one piece of pie. But what happens is when the government prints more money, now there are more pieces of pie of total wealth. And so when you used to say, my piece of the pie is only 1/100th, then it became 1/1000th, and now it's 1/100th of a thousand. 1/100th of a thousandth. Now that we put money, when we put more money into the system, we shouldn't be shocked that the wealthy get more of it, because that's why they're called the wealthy. They're really good at accumulating wealth.
And when you have wealth, it's a lot easier to build on that wealth. I mean, if you inherit debt, as in which many of us are, myself included, when you inherit debt from your family instead of an inheritance like Mitt Romney or is getting, that's going to only compound itself. You're digging yourself out of a hole versus, being able to invest and having exponential increase of your wealth.
Exactly right. And you look at sort of this conspiracy that's happening to get us to take debt. College loans right now are ridiculous, right? It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a 4-year degree. And honestly, if you ask me, there's some sort of combination where the banks and the schools are working together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, of course.
And that's what's happened, is that there used to be there's this giant pile of money. The government had good intentions. They said, you know what? We think everybody's life would be better if they went to college. And so we're going to put this giant pile of money here. If you want to go to college, come get a shovel, get some money. And so kids did. They came to school, they got the shovel, they showed up, and the school said, oh my God, you have a shovel full of money. Let us get you a wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
Let us figure out
Let's
how
raise
you
the
can get
prices
that
more. Let's build buildings. Let's have special catering.
Make it more loans, less grants.
Exactly.
Less,
And it's one of the classic things. And then one of the premises of America is that you can declare bankruptcy. You can default on your loans. There are no debtor prisons in the United States. You can walk away and say, you know what? You can.
It's not that easy.
It's not true anymore, though.
No, but
it
used to be that. You could declare bankruptcy and say, you can screw my credit rating, but that's it. But no, federal loans, the government changed the law. They took away your right to declare bankruptcy on your federal loans.
You're stuck with them.
So you're stuck, and then
they're raising the rates.
The next generation.
And let's look at how do we change this? Because this is my issue. It's like I see all these people shouting about education. We need to fund more education. And to me, it's the education nonprofit. I call them corporations because that's what they are. Nonprofit corporations. Like Harvard University is one of the biggest corporations in Boston. Boston University,
true,
Northeastern. They own the city. They own all the land, all the businesses. They own everything. So when they use their students to say we need more funding for education, it's exactly goes to where Dan said. It goes to the private nonprofit corporation.
More than that,
and the banks.
Those private universities are actually conspiring against the public because UMass Boston. I think that the states. As the states being us, we the people, the state is more responsive to us. The state has done an excellent job of setting up the state university system.
Yes, I like it.
So, and I'm a UMass Boston graduate myself.
Yeah, UMass State. All three of us are state university college graduates.
That's absolutely what government can do at a smaller scale. When we say, okay, you know what, the state recognizes that we benefit by having an educated populace, we're going to create a university, that's great. UMass tried to open up a school of social work in Boston. The problem is that UMass is controlled by the legislature. And so Harvard and BC and Simmons, who all have schools of social work, said, absolutely, you are not opening up a school of social work. You're not going to let people come in and get masters of social work for $5,000 a year because that threatens our business model.
Right.
And that's a real problem.
I always thought it would make so much more sense is if we could subsidize those types of degrees where people are going into, and they used to do this more, and now it's been changed, but people who are going into degrees where they're working in education, when they're building the next
student loans for
$100,000+
for a job that earns
right, exactly, that earns nothing. It's like
crazy.
So I think that there are a couple of places where I do agree with that idea of saying there are degrees that we should sponsor. One of them I think is a good solution to our healthcare problem. Right now, the AMA controls the number of doctors allowed in the United States. They don't have unlimited admissions to medical school. If we get rid of that requirement and say anybody who wants to go to medical school, the government will pay for you, assuming that you graduate. So you got to do what you have to do to graduate, et cetera. Flood the market with doctors.
That would be cool.
What would happen? Exactly. What would happen if suddenly there were 50,000 doctors in Boston?
Price would go down.
Price would go
Doctors
down?
would be
The skill
expiring
would
for
go- I
service.
mean,
I'd be able to say, hey,
services
doc,
would
you
go
want-
up.
Yeah, doc,
They
you
look
want-
a lot like Cuba in some ways in this.
They
in
would
their
be making
medical
house
system.
calls
Yeah.
again.
I'd be like, Doc, can you come over and I'll make you some dinner?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And that's exactly what would happen. And obviously they're fighting against that. Nurse practitioners, and again, full disclosure, I worked at Mass General for 9 years in a program that helped to educate nurse practitioners. Nurse practitioners can do most of the stuff that a general practitioner can. They can prescribe drugs. They're very knowledgeable.
They get paid so much less.
They get paid so much less, but also they have a real emphasis on patient care. And so in a lot of cases, I prefer for my primary care person to be a nurse practitioner because they seem more interested in what I am doing, what my personal health care is.
Doctors always more colder and further reserved away, it seems.
So that's a great way to address this healthcare issue and say, oh, you know what? If we have more nurse practitioners, healthcare costs are going to go down. So what are doctors doing about that? In states around the union now, they're introducing legislation that say nurse practitioners cannot operate unless they work for a doctor.
Yeah, there you go.
And so, I mean, it's one of those conspiracies. Again, it's people using government. corporations using government to take away rights from the people.
Yep. And they're just doing that in Rhode Island related to the medical marijuana program there. For a long time, at first, it was just the doctors that could recommend the medical marijuana. And then they added nurse practitioners in Rhode Island. And that kind of opened it up because people were able to find nurse practitioners that would allow them recommend medical cannabis in Rhode Island. And since they're now removing nurse practitioners, and it's just doctors again. And it's just like you said. Now the patients can't find doctors. They're spending more money. They have to go to see a doctor 6 or 7 times. They have to go shop for a doctor because doctors are harder to find that will actually
And the thing about it is one of the things that's recognized in the Affordable Care Act is that preventative care really works. You know, if people get in and see a doctor on a regular basis, they're going to be healthier. They're going to end up spending less money on health care overall. The problem is that the availability of doctors is such that costs a lot of money right now. If we could get more healthcare professionals out there on the street, we can solve a lot of our problems right now.
I love that. That's
right on.
I agree 100%.
I think that's worth a applause.
We're
running
long today.
I know we are.
We have more questions too.
We do.
Would you hang out for a little while?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I got no place to go.
Fantastic.
Right, well, and if anyone's listening, I know people are listening, but if you want to call in and ask a question to Dan Fishman for Congress, 617-606-4122. Give us a ring and send us instant feedback at if@unregularradio.com.
Yeah, Dan's going to be hanging out, so we're going to take a quick break, listen to some music, and then we're going to come back with, are we going to talk about the free Leah up next? Or
We'll talk, we'll talk to Dan for a little while longer, and then we'll go into free Leah a little later, and we'll also get into question three.
All right. Keep it locked. 2 hotheads.
Live back, 2 hotheads where activism happens.
We were having a quick powwow there and didn't know we were coming back so quick, but here we are.
Yeah.
That was Living Dead Girl, too. Is that Rob Zombie or was he White Zombie at that point? Oh, nice. All right. I like that song. Nice for Halloween. And we still have
Dan Fishman. That's me.
Fishman. I almost got you.
Dan Fishman for Congress.com is the website, right?
Fishman for Congress.com.
I always say that wrong. Fishman for Congress.
Just in case there's another Fishman out there who wants to run for Congress, I didn't want to let him have the domain.
Yeah, we see what happens when people don't register their domains.
Oh, yeah. Great. Yeah, nice tie-in.
Yep. So Dan Fishman has been hanging out with us, and we've been having lots of great conversations with him. And I really wish I was in your district so I could vote for you.
You know what? I guarantee you that you know 5 people in my district. So that's one of the things that people can do who like what they hear. Go to the Facebook page. Like the Facebook page, share some of the posts out there about liberty, stuff like that, because I guarantee you your impact is larger than just you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and I guarantee you I will have more than 5 people in that district voting for you.
That's what I like.
That's where I grew up. I mean, I think Nikki, too. Nikki's going to have a bunch of people. She's here, too. Say hi, hello, Nikki Smokes.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, that's where I grew up, so we'll definitely get some people voting for you.
Yeah, and I hear, Dan was just saying during the break that your video that you had done with him had gotten the most hits of. That's the first thing that pops up when you Google your name, or when you
search for Fishman Libertarian. Certainly for a while, I can't say that right at this moment because Google changes things, but for a while, and it's very popular. That video,
it probably will. You know,
and the interesting thing about it is that it's shared in a ton of different places too. So not only your post, but all your fans have pretty much shared it as well. And I saw it on a Ron Paul forum, stuff like that. So it's really awesome. It's going.
Yeah, it gets out there. But one of the things too is when you become a YouTube partner, then your videos come up at the top on searches a lot of times, and that's what we have on that Mike Can account. We're our YouTube partner. It's funny because now I heard Google's getting an antitrust suit against them about their searches because of that, because they're stacking it for their advertising.
Right?
You're not going to see a clip for something else that's not a YouTube partner, or you're not going to see a clip that's like from MetaCafe or another non-Google videos.
Right. Well, there's something to that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But we had a lot more questions and discussions, even about the campaign. We were talking about the campaign.
The poll numbers.
Yeah. On the poll numbers. Why don't we get into that, too? What are you polling at right now?
So the first poll that included me was WBUR. I came in at 7% with leaners, but in the crosstabs, which is sort of an explanation of what people are saying when they say who they're going to vote for, 60% of the population had never heard of me. So if you say that I'm 7% with 40% of the people who have heard of me, if I can get to 100% name recognition, it's about 17%. And that's, before I started any advertising, before any of the debates, anything like that. Since then, there's been a poll that was commissioned by the Massachusetts Democratic Party. They deliberately kept me out of it because ask anybody who's been to any of the debates, I have been crushing it at the debates. The last debate is online right now, and everybody.
I saw one of them. You did really well.
Tierney, well, I did great at the Lynn one.
Yep.
The one in Danvers, afterwards, people were coming up to me and they were saying, "You were amazing. This is really it." And the number one thing that people said to me is they're like, "This can't be the end for you."
Yes.
Like if you
Right.
don't win, you have to keep running. You can't pull a.
Are you gonna keep? What are you thinking?
So, 80% of campaigning I like. I love going out and talking to people. I love
Right.
the issues, stuff like that. 20% of it is just terrible. Everybody gets hate mail. I answer my own, and at
That's
times,
the problem. Yeah.
right, and at times that can be really demoralizing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing about it is that a lot of times I get approached by hardcore social conservatives who think that because I support small government, I support small government so that they can be bigots in public.
Yeah.
And I do not support that. That's not what I
That's a
support.
tough group of people to deal with.
It really is. And the thing about it is that these guys, it's crazy because they're social conservatives, but they actually want me to run ads attacking Richard Tisei because they think if he wins, it's the end of their Republican Party.
Because he's openly gay, is that?
He's openly gay. He supports repealing Defense of Marriage Act. He is pro-choice.
Yeah.
He is,
He's more of a Bill Weld Republican.
Yeah, well, and that's actually the way that he describes himself.
Yeah.
And I would say, it's funny, one of the things he talks about in the debates is because, Tierney is really sort of painting him as a Tea Party guy.
Yeah.
He said, "I am the only openly gay, pro-choice person on the planet being painted as a Tea Party extremist."
That's true.
Yeah, and Tisei and I disagree on a lot of issues,
yeah.
but he is not a Tea Party guy. And honestly, it's disingenuous and it hurts the political process for us to use labels that are not true to try to
Absolutely.
tar
Right.
everybody with the same brush.
And that's weird that Tierney's, Congressman Tierney is the Democrat. He's the incumbent.
Yeah.
He's embroiled in a huge scandal right now with his wife. His
Right.
wife's in jail, right?
No, she's out of jail. She went to jail for 30 days.
Only 30 days for that?
Only 30
she
days.
wanted, what, $2 million for her brothers?
Well, I'm not sure exactly how much she laundered, but then there's another scandal going on right now where she received $200,000 and it didn't show up in his house ethics committee report.
Oh, he could be in trouble for that.
Yeah, well, and I think that he probably will. There's a lot of stuff going on. However, when I met Gary Johnson's advance man when I went to go see him in New Hampshire, he said, that's not necessarily a good thing for you because we have statistics that show that when a congressman is accused of a crime, he tends to get reelected.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, unless
It's
they go
so
to jail.
true.
Like Nikki Pockets, remember him?
Yeah.
Marv Rulis.
But you know what? Then when they get out, they tend to win again. Marion Barry in Washington,
Barry,
D.C.
yeah,
Some of
exactly.
them. It depends.
Yeah, it does depend.
Some of them, yes. Some no.
Right.
So
But-
now we need to have like a tryst with a crack whore, and then we'll be set. We'll be good to go.
Maybe I can find something a
kidding.
little
Yeah,
less
maybe,
objectionable.
yeah.
So I mean, it is that is good to hear that you're polling. I mean, you're getting numbers.
No,
7% is a good number.
7% is a good
With
number, and
that
I'm telling you, that was before the
limited-
advertising.
yeah.
If they would do a poll right now that would include me, I know I would make at least 10%.
That's great.
Because, just the support that we
That's
get all the time
fantastic.
now.
And this is on, like you said, a limited budget. I mean, it must just be from individual donors,
Well,
and you know.
absolutely, it's all individual donors, and that's the thing that really irritated me most about WCVB keeping me out of the debate. Is they said one of the reasons is because I don't have $50,000. I'm deliberately trying to say that you can run for office without spending money like that.
Right,
know.
that's a part of your
Exactly.
Of your
I don't want
platform.
it. Exactly. I don't want
that money shouldn't buy government.
They give-
Exactly right.
And look at like Jesse
You're
Ventura.
walking the walk.
I don't
Right.
think Jesse Ventura had $50,000 in the account when he won as governor for Minnesota. Like WCVB, you're leaving out people who could actually win the election. How bankrupt are you? Seriously, over money.
Yeah, what are they afraid of?
Right.
That's a good question. What do you think? I mean, it
You know-
prompts this.
Yeah, I don't want to say that it's directly tied to the fact that I didn't buy advertising from them because I have no proof of that.
Right,
But
it seems
Exactly.
awfully suspicious. Yeah, that's distressing.
And they do. Let's put it this way: like anyone in media right now,
well,
especially in news and politics, this is a time when you make a lot of money, especially the TV and the radio stations. This keeps them in business. Even my little stuff, my YouTubes, my Mike Can, it goes up during the election. I get more money because these campaigns spend a lot of money.
Right. Tierney and Tisei have both raised and are going to spend over $1 million. Last April, Tisei spent $600,000 in the Boston television market to buy advertising. That means a lot to the Boston broadcast guys, especially in this day. Exactly.
That's how it pays the bonuses. Like, seriously, when these TV companies and the radio and even the print, they have a certain amount they're going to get for Toyota and Budweiser and all those, their corporate accounts.
Right.
What really makes the extra money and determines if they have a good year is if that local money comes in and if that politician money comes
Exactly right. And, for broadcast is struggling right now. It's a new media world, and they have to find ways to make ends meet. And in this case, if all of a sudden there's a precedent established of a candidate who is not going to spend a lot of money, what does that mean for their bottom line in the future? Don't they want to kill that candidate who's not spending a ton of money on advertising?
Yes.
So
it's disgusting.
And
they wonder why less people are watching their news.
Right.
Why more people are turning to YouTube and the blogs and the Facebook.
And they're getting increasingly more desperate, which is why they have to turn these debates and especially the presidential ones, into these fluff pieces that are more like entertainment tonight.
So that's one of the things that I talk about too. So I have a pamphlet that I give out. That's part of my campaign strategies. That I'm cheap in terms of how I can spend money, but I want to be effective. Massachusetts has this incredible tradition of pamphleting. Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. It was the most popular book in the United States before the Revolutionary War, and had to do with why the Americans should revolt against the government that was so far away, was no longer representative of who they are. So I have a little pamphlet. I actually brought one. I'll give it to you before I leave. And essentially, one of the things that I say in there is that think about what reality television has become. They take a camera, they put together people who do not get along together, they fuel them with alcohol, and boom, high-rating television.
Yep.
This is Congress.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Congress is. Congress has become reality television.
It's so true.
And, they fight and they say these terrible things.
Then why is C-SPAN still so boring?
Yeah. Well, they don't really focus as much on
bad producers is what it is.
Extreme C-SPAN.
Yeah. They need the extreme version.
Right.
Because that's what ABC and CNN and Fox News are. I mean,
it's true.
It's like the presidential debates. It's like the ultimate Super Bowl of reality shows, Obama versus Romney. Right. I mean, that's what it is, isn't it?
Two men enter, one man leaves.
Yeah, right. I mean, you're a liar.
Celebrity death match.
Right, and so that was one of the things that somebody talked to me about too at the last debate. Was they said, you were very calm. That doesn't work well in a debate because you were calming those guys down, and it kind of stopped the fireworks. And I'm like, I want to have a rational conversation. I think that some of the things that John Tierney has...
People aren't interested in rational conversations.
That's exactly what it is. And it's not going to change until we the people change, until we the people say, this is the government that we want. And so long as we are a reality television nation, we're going to have a hard time not being a reality television government as well.
Wow.
Yeah. That's why our struggle is more than just elections, too.
Exactly.
It's a longer term.
Exactly right.
The culture wars in general.
Right, and that's exactly what it is. We have this situation where we're so demonizing of the other side, and we're not tolerant at all. And honestly, we can all examine our personal lives at time and say, what did I do here? Mike, you gave a great example of this where you said, you know what? I realized that I crossed the line at one point in the last week, and I went back and I apologized. And that's what we have to do, is we have to recognize the fact that absolutely we are all passionate about our issues. We have to recognize everybody's passionate about their issue. Right. Everybody is passionate about their issue. And that's what the Libertarian Party is all about, is the idea that we should all have as much freedom, as much liberty in our personal lives as we can handle.
That passion.
Exactly right.
Right. Right on.
And that's
so
what
how
it is,
can we
responsibility.
How can we help you? I mean,
the number one thing that people can do right now, join the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, share the posts. I'm not collecting a lot of money, but personal donations are welcome. There's a donate button on the Facebook page. There's a donate button on the webpage. Now would be the time to
do it. We're in crunch time, right?
Exactly right. Well, so I'm going to be making one TV buy coming up in the next 2 weeks. And local cable actually is remarkably affordable.
Yes.
And I have a person at Comcast who has been very helpful in saying, listen, you can do something. You can actually get a commercial on, seen by a lot of people. I have a friend who... great film producer, well, not great film producer, but it does a 72-hour film festival every year in Boston.
Cool,
and,
that's awesome.
Yeah, he puts together some nice stuff. Matt McLaughlin, a little plug for him.
Good.
Anyway, but so he put together a really nice commercial for me. It's at 40 seconds. We're going to put together another 30-second one. That's going to be the one that we're going to play. And those are the things that need to happen. And then the other thing about it is just be involved. Talk about the issues. You know, a lot of times we were raised in a generation where we say, oh, don't talk about politics in public. That's got to change. We have to talk about this government that is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. Because it ain't anymore.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Right now it's professional politicians.
If we spent a fraction of the time that we spend posting on Facebook or Twitter, writing letters to the editor or a letter to a senator, or or just getting out and doing something,
just talking amongst ourselves.
Yeah,
because,
even that.
You know, the reality of it is that hardcore conservatives, I don't have a lot in common with them, but it benefits me to understand them, to understand where they're coming from.
Sure.
And the same thing, I have a lot of friends who are really far left. Really, essentially socialist, communist, stuff like that. We disagree about a lot of stuff, but I want to understand what they're thinking about.
Right.
And you know what? The hardcore conservatives, in terms of their idea of their personal liberties, there's something for me to learn, because they're right that to a certain extent government has stepped on what they can do. The hardcore socialists, they're absolutely right too in saying that, you know what, there is some obligation for society to everybody as a whole. And an example of this, one of my personal charity causes has always been hunger. I'm in favor of small government all the time, except food stamps. I will say expand the food stamp program.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that no matter what, there's enough food for everybody.
Sure.
I actually think that we could take it a step further. I think food stamps tend to get abused. I'd rather have like food kitchens. You want to walk in, get whatever you want out of there, take it. Let's eliminate that. Our society is wealthy enough that we can feed everybody.
Yeah, I'll
We're
support
all
that
for it.
too.
We're all for that.
Going against my libertarian usualness.
Well, see, that's the thing about
It's like, you know what? You got to look at the reality of the world instead of being so dogmatic sometimes.
Yep.
Right.
Where are we right now? I mean, I know where we want to be in some cases, but like, where are we right now?
Well, and here's another great thing to think about in terms of libertarian is that we are on the cusp of another revolution. When the Industrial Revolution happened, some jobs that were there went away. Communication revolution happened. Some jobs that were there have faded away. We're on the cusp of the robotic revolution. You might have a Roomba in your house. You might have some other simple robot. Things are changing. You look at automated farms, that stuff. You look at how factories are working right now for Walmart, an incredible documentary on PBS. Those jobs are going away. We have to talk about what's going to happen in our society when the machines step up and take away a lot of work.
True.
When we say that we have all this value on people for work and we expect them to work to earn their living, if we take away that work, what does that mean for our people? What does that mean for society? And we're not talking about it at all at this point in time.
Yeah.
I
mean, isn't that even what's happened too? Like that the jobs just are not here anymore.
Well,
people are losing. I mean, how can you look for a job when there's 300 people applying for it?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's a great example. One of the things that bothers me in my personal job, I'm a software engineer working special education. My software makes special education a lot easier. There's a lot of paperwork involved and stuff like that. And so it's a great benefit to the school district. But invariably, when a school district buys our product, they can get rid of one secretary because there was that much paperwork involved. Yeah. And it's a real dilemma because, I feel bad about that. I feel good that we're making special education better. I feel bad that I'm taking people's jobs away.
That's very complex.
It's super complex, and that's where our technology revolution is taking us.
We've moved away from manufacturing, from those types of jobs that fueled our economy and fueled our sense of, a sense of worth as American people. And now so much of it is based on, technological advancement or service industry stuff. Right. And it's not. It's
exactly right. Those jobs are all going away, and right now some of them are going to China. But you look at a modern American factory. Giant customized robots that are there that are doing what people used to do all the time. And we think that's progress. And it is progress. The problem is that we don't understand what the consequences of that progress is. Yeah. What does that mean for people who previously depended on these jobs to make ends meet?
Right.
Now they're going away.
It's true. And we could go on and on about this. It's totally amazing that we
didn't even get out to all of our questions today.
I know, but
I'm sorry, guys. I will chat around.
Don't apologize. I think it's amazing.
A lot of good.
Great conversation. And again, if you have time to, if you want to weigh in, our number is always behind me.
617-606-4122.
As always, so call in. On Regular Radio. We've had an awesome time talking to Dan Fishman. Once again, the website is Fishman. Fishman runforcongress.com.
Exactly
so you can
right.
check it out. Support him, please. We support him here 100%. We'll be taking pictures with him with our Dan Fishman Libertarian for U.S. Congress t-shirts that he brought. And yeah, if you got a few extra bucks to spare, if you want to write to your local paper, if you
letters to the editor, huge help.
Join the Facebook page at the very least. Give this guy some support because he certainly deserves it. He's earned
let's
our
hear it
support.
for Dan Fishman.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Coming in. Thank you for speaking out too. We've seen you at Suffolk University Normal speaking for the marijuana legalization group there.
I was at the Freedom Fest.
Yeah,
Nice.
you're part of our community. I saw one interview where they were asking you how you differentiate, how you differ from Tisei. The first thing you brought up was marijuana legalization.
Well, I mean, it's
You're not afraid.
Yeah, because the thing about it is that if you're tolerant, you should be tolerant of everything. And that's one of the ways that, I mean, he's a guy who's tolerant in a lot of things in his life, but he's not tolerant of everything. And that's what I want to lead us to, is an idea that we can be tolerant of everything that doesn't impact our personal liberty.
We love that you're speaking out for us
Yes.
and running for us.
Yes.
I really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
We wish you
My
all
pleasure.
the luck in the world. We look forward to seeing that TV spot too.
Yep. Should be coming out soon.
All right. Dan Fishman, once again, round of applause.
FishmanForCongress.com.
FishmanForCongress.com. Two Hotheads where activism happens. We're going to be right back after
Before we get back, make sure, I want to say one more thing. Make sure you check out Dan on Facebook.
Yes.
Fishman for Congress. Join the Facebook group.
Yeah, that
It's
makes
a
a big
Facebook
difference.
page, I guess. Like it.
Yep.
And we're on it. We'll post it again on our Two Hotheads
Yep.
page.
All right, and we're going to take a quick break for music. What do we got coming up?
How do you folks feel about David Bowie?
I am very pro Bowie.
Is it going to be
Let's do it.
changes? Because that's what we're talking
How about
about.
I'm afraid of Americans?
Man Who Sold the Moon?
Appropriate, yeah, appropriate. No, we'll do. What Bo do you got for us?
The American song.
All right, perfect. All right, two hotheads.
Americans. We're Americans.
Citizen journalism is the future. Because right now the mainstream media is not covering the stories that we, the people, need to know about. The reason why they're not covering it is because they're dependent on corporate advertising for their thing. So if there's a story that a corporation doesn't like, it gets killed, it doesn't make it out there. This is what the communication revolution is all about, is that citizen journalists can report on stories that are interesting to citizens. I really appreciate the fact that you guys are able to have me on here, and you asked better questions than I got from anybody else in the entire time. We had a good conversation about the issues. That benefits the people.